So, in this clip, we're going to watch a black conservative repeatedly embarrass himself while attempting to defend the GOP's campaign against Anthony Fauci on CNN Newsnight with Abby Phillip. But Abby Phillip isn't going to simply let those arguments slide. She repeatedly challenges the claims he's putting forward, pushes back on his talking points, and things eventually get pretty heated. As usual, we're going to watch the entire clip, and then I'll give you guys my thoughts toward the end. Let's get into it.
Voted to hold Dr. Anthony Fauci in contempt of Congress. And it's because, you'll remember, Fauci pleaded the fifth more than 100 times during a hearing on COVID last week. Today, Senator Paul said that he plans to bypass a full Senate vote and send the recommendation directly to the higher-ups at the DOJ.
There is some precedent for doing it that way, and it still may be done that way. But for now, we will hand carry this over to the Attorney General. We will hand carry this to the District Court here in Columbia, and we will, as a committee, we have voted the majority to refer this, so that will be accomplished today.
And just a few hours later, the DOJ said it did receive the document and is reviewing it and will work with the Senate accordingly. Now, Fauci's lawyer is calling all of this a political stunt and a weaponization of the Justice Department. Meanwhile, Trump, who once awarded Fauci a presidential commendation for his work on Operation Warp Speed, had this to say about today's decision.
They prosecuted Peter Navarro and they prosecuted Steve Bannon, two very decent people, over something that essentially was never prosecuted before. So when you see that happen, you sort of say maybe he should. What he did is far more serious than a lot of crimes, frankly.
This continues some degree of political theater, and now actually it goes to Jeanine Pirro in the U.S. District of Washington to decide whether or not she's going to charge him.
And guess what do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think is going to happen there?
Well, she's on thin ice because of what just happened with the reflecting pool. You know, Donald Trump has been very public in saying that he was very angry at the fact that she dropped the case against the gentleman who was alleged to have, David Hearn. And so I think that she's going to say, yes, sir, and try and prosecute this case. I think they're going to have I think it's going to be tough for them. But at the end of the day, I think the bigger picture here is that this is a person who was acting as a government official, right? He was at the behest of the Biden administration. To start prosecuting Fauci, I think, sets a very dangerous precedent.
Well, he started at the behest of the Trump administration, and I think we should point that out. Like, he was an advisory position. He did not have the authority to do any of the things people are claiming he is responsible for. He didn't shut down the country. Trump chose to. He didn't shut down the schools. Trump did. He didn't mandate masks. Trump did. So he's being used as a scapegoat to distract from everything, from the war, from the diarrhea lettuce, from the cost of everything, from the decreasing health care, the Epstein files, whatever it is. He's being used right now. We're coming back to re-litigate COVID. And it does feel like a lawless political stunt. And I don't think it'll go all the way through the courts. But if you're going to hand it right from a small committee to Jeanine Pirro, who, like you said, is on thin ice, and then it might go to AG Todd Blanche, of course he's going to be rounded up. But you shouldn't be tarring and feathering someone that has been in 6 administrations doing nothing but being a devoted servant of our public health. It's a shame.
Forget about prosecuting him. The guy should be in a mental institution. He's a textbook sociopath. I mean, DSM-5 level sociopath who was running our pandemic response. Low empathy, ability to inflict pain on innocence, narcissism. I mean, let me read diary entries for you. Verbatim. At the height of the pandemic. Hold on, guys. At the pandemic.
Hold on, Caroline.
March 2020.
Caroline, let me just ask you.
He's writing in his diary.
Hold on. What are you talking about?
Oh,
are you suggesting that he should be in a mental institution for having an ego, which I think...
I'm close to that.
Which I think would characterize just about every single person in Washington.
At the height of the pandemic, when Americans aren't allowed to see grandma dying of COVID, what is Anthony Fauci writing about? The media is so hot.
Respectfully, there is one person at this table who worked with Dr. Fauci. I worked at the White House.
Written about me.
Caroline, I worked at the White House during COVID. I was Trump's deputy press secretary during COVID. So I actually worked with people like Dr. Fauci.
He couldn't keep him off TV. You're in the press office. You would know his face was on.
And guess what, Caroline? Guess what? of course, I will acknowledge, was it very frustrating working in the White House press office and him being on a magazine cover or doing an interview on TV where he's talking ill about the White House and its COVID response? Yes, that was annoying. But the thing is that them trying to scapegoat him and say that it's all his fault, we were dealing with a novel virus. This was once in a lifetime generational pandemic. And so we were all figuring it out as we were going.
He was busy reading his own press clips.
No,
donuts. They made donuts about
okay, and you don't think that Donald Trump and all the other senators on the Hill are just as narcissistic? I mean, come on, those guys would slit someone's throat to go on Fox News.
Maybe he was drinking his own Kool-Aid.
Oh, and you all
but you know who was pouring the Kool-Aid as well?
You guys loved him.
You know who was pouring the Kool-Aid as well, Caroline?
I'm sorry.
Donald Trump. Let's play the clips.
We have, whether it's Dr. Fauci, we have the best people on earth. Anthony, who's become where's Anthony? He's become a major television star for all the right reasons. No, he's just so professional, so good. I'm not firing him. I think he's a wonderful guy. I have a very good relationship with Dr. Fauci. He's got a very good approval rating, and I like that. He was a great basketball player. Did anybody know that? He was a little on the short side for the NBA, but he was talented. I told Tony Fauci, I said, why don't you move to New York, run against AOC? You will win easily. I learned a lot from Tony. He's a good man. I like Dr. Fauci a lot, just so you understand.
Now, to be honest, I don't care about any of that. I think it's totally fine that Trump is praising him. I think it is embarrassing that he loved his press so much. But my question is, what is he being prosecuted for?
I think that's a very fair question. I echo everything that she just said, but that had nothing to do with criminal prosecution. I believe that the Senate committee made a mistake, and that mistake was saying before the hearing that their intention was to call him and create some sort of perjury trap. One thing the Fifth Amendment stands for is you can't be forced to testify against yourself. And if someone tells you, show up here and there's going to be a perjury trap, you get to say you're going to protect yourself from the Fifth Amendment. There's only a small technical question that may get answered, and that is if he gave the statement that he gave before invoking the Fifth, did that statement inadvertently waive the Fifth? But with regard to this prosecution...
but just really quickly on that point, he invoked the Fifth in response to individual questions. Are you not allowed to do that? You don't have to incriminate.
Yes.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying to answer your own question about whether his opening statement invalidated
that's an open question that the court may have to figure out.
I'm asking you, the subsequent invoking of the Fifth, those seem to be all valid because they are in response to specific inquiries that he declined to answer.
Well, the part of the problem with that is that this whole event was considered one event. It wasn't 15 separate events.
But
it was
invoking
one
the Fifth
event.
doesn't have to be about any particular event. It
Actually,
has to be about,
that's not the way the courts have treated the Fifth Amendment.
It is about incriminating yourself, period.
That is not the way.
He could have decided to answer some questions, but not others.
If you're sitting on the stand and you start answering questions, and then you decide you're not going to answer questions by invoking the Fifth, and then you decide you will, you are considered to have waived it. But the question is, was the mere formality of a statement that waiver? That's a small technical question, and I really wonder if anybody would want to pursue that case just for that.
And I think the larger question here is exactly that. Like, that is not a reason to prosecute Fauci. There are real questions about this pandemic. There are real questions about what happened there. A million people died, how they died. What can we learn from what happened there? And how can we protect ourselves and everyone during the next pandemic? But that's not what was going on in Congress. What was going on in that hearing was actually trying to entrap Fauci, as you said. They made it very clear that they told him. And so they could have, if they really wanted him to answer questions, they could have just said, we're giving you immunity. We are granting you immunity. You can answer all of our questions and we will not prosecute you. But they did not do that. Why?
It's because they don't actually care about, it wasn't a fact-finding mission. It was a witch hunt. And they were trying to make him their scapegoat. And
Well,
it's
he is
really,
a witch. Let's not forget that.
We disagree on that, but I will say that
Sorry, I don't know
it is
what that
frustrating
means, but
because
go
this
ahead.
is what's dangerous about politicizing public health. Because we actually, if we had serious people in office who actually wanted to improve public safety when it came to public health, in case, God forbid, we face another pandemic and we have to go through that again, and knock on wood, I really hope we don't. But if we did, they could have actually asked him serious questions about what we could have improved upon. But
Oh, I know what we could have improved upon. How about I'll start with the fact that 8,000 U.S. service members were discharged from the military
I'd
for
like
not
to
taking the
ask-
vaccine.
All right,
We'll
like
start
to
there
ask
with
that.
civil liberties.
How do you manage to get $1 million in extra income and bonuses unrelated to your
hold on.
work?
Hey,
none of
that's
that-
that's a question for the federal government, actually, because if it wasn't allowed, then it wasn't allowed. That's
But
actually
he's got a pardon now.
That's actually a pretty easy question to answer.
But he's got a pardon
so,
now. It's illegal, but he's got a
so-
pardon.
I feel like you guys are just
Anyway,
slandering
next for
someone
us.
that has helped us so much.
So anyway, let's move on. I honestly feel like these people are simply trying to smear a man who has contributed a great deal to public health. So let's actually break this entire thing down, because I don't think it's particularly difficult to understand when you look closely at what this black conservative and Caroline Sunshine were attempting to argue on that panel. This was clearly a political stunt. Of course it was. It's performative politics, it's MAGA, and at this point we already know exactly what we're looking at. Now when it comes to Anthony Fauci, this is how I see the situation. Fauci pleaded the Fifth after the Senate committee had already made it clear that they were coming after him. They showed their intentions before the hearing even took place. And like you heard Navarro explain during that discussion, if they genuinely wanted answers from Fauci, they could have simply told him, listen, we're giving you complete immunity. We want you to answer these questions so we can understand what happened and make sure that if another pandemic ever happens, we're better prepared. That's literally all they needed to do. But that was never the real objective. The goal was not to prepare for the future or learn from what happened. The goal was to put Anthony Fauci in a position where they could trap him. That's exactly what this was about. And here's the part that I find especially interesting. MAGA Republicans have spent years complaining about political witch hunts and constantly talking about how unfair it is when they believe their side is being targeted, but now they're doing essentially the same thing to someone else. If they genuinely believe that political witch hunts are wrong and that they're a waste of time, then why aren't they focusing their energy on issues that actually matter to the American people? The truth is, they're not opposed to witch hunts. They're opposed to being the target of them. That's the difference. And I don't believe the investigations into Donald Trump were simply witch hunts either. I believe there were serious allegations and serious issues that deserve to be investigated. But now that the situation has flipped and the other side has an opportunity to target someone they dislike, suddenly the same behavior is acceptable. That's the hypocrisy we're seeing here. It's all performative. Let's be honest, I don't believe anything significant is going to happen to Anthony Fauci. Nothing is going to happen to Anthony Fauci. What I genuinely think this entire situation represents is a distraction. It's a distraction from the war, from the rising cost of living, and from the Epstein files. And the reason I say that is because we've literally seen Donald Trump himself praising Anthony Fauci and talking positively about the work he was doing. You can go back and watch those clips yourself. Donald Trump was openly complimenting Fauci and defending him. But this is the pattern with MAGA. This is what they repeatedly do. When they can't deliver meaningful results, they find another person or another issue to focus everyone's attention on. Instead of addressing the things that could actually improve people's lives, they create distractions that won't put more money into people's pockets, won't solve the problems Americans are facing, and won't change the consequences of the decisions they're making. This is what they do. They create these highly performative political battles because they know their audience will respond to them. It's almost cult-like behavior. Once they decide that someone is the enemy, they want that person punished, prosecuted, and destroyed, even when they can't clearly identify an actual crime that person committed. And yes, maybe some of the things Fauci wrote in his journal were strange. Maybe he enjoyed the attention and the positive press a little too much. Maybe he drank some of his own Kool-Aid, but none of those things are crimes. Being arrogant isn't a crime. Enjoying media, attention isn't a crime. Having an ego isn't a crime. So if there is an actual criminal offense here, then present the evidence and explain exactly what the crime is. Otherwise, this looks like nothing more than another political performance designed to give MAGA voters someone else to blame. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. And as always, I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.